line.
Well, I'm a little tardy caveman, but great to see everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second half of our second part of digging into the RIA cost of doing business survey. And today, we're going to be digging into section one and doing about the financial benchmarks and performance analysis. So with you have the lucky honor and privilege of having me. My name is Marcy Richardson, COO of Guarantee Restoration, as your moderator. And I have a lovely group of panelists with me here. First, I'm going to kick it off to the dynamic duo there sitting together. Phil and Jim, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, hey everybody, welcome. I'm Jim Eckerd, CFO at Thomasville Restoration. I've been in the industry and at Thomasville for about 5 years, but long time accounting and finance nerd before that, and looking forward to digging in.
I'm Phil Rosebrook. I'm the president of Business Mentors. I'm a longtime restoration nerd. Been in the industry for about 38 years now. Spent 27 as a management consultant, helping companies get their numbers straight and define where they're going and move the direction down the road to get to where they want to be. So,
Katie?
Good afternoon. My name is Katie Smith. I'm the owner of PHC Restoration in North Carolina. We are a single location company, kind of falling into that everyday restorer range that you see in the survey. I am a past president of the RIA and a volunteer with this project. I've been proofing this with the KnowHow team for many months now, and I'm excited for everybody to get their hands on it.
Leighton, you want to?
Yeah, everyone, I'm the CEO at KnowHow, and we're an AI platform that helps restorers onboard and train and guide and support their workforces. And my team works alongside the RIA's very diligent volunteer feedback and editing team to produce a report, and excited to be here.
Thank you, Leighton. And Jeff?
I'm Jeff Moore, president of ATI, second generation restorer, and the current RIA president.
Thank you. Our goals for this session is we're going to dig in and analyze how the business's mix influence your profitability. We're going to explore the TPA dynamics, the financial structure and operational benchmarks. And the goal here is to offer you actionable steps to improve your internal metrics of where you are in your company. But first, we do have to do a little housekeeping and read our antitrust statement. I'm going to read it verbatim for you all. It is the policy of the RIA to comply with the letter and spirit of all applicable federal, state, and international trade regulations and antitrust laws. All activities or discussions occurring under the auspices of the association shall be in compliance with the letter and spirit of RIA's antitrust policy and shall be refrained from discussing topics which might be construed as tending to raise, lower, or stabilize prices, regulate production, allocate markets, encourage boycotts, foster unfair trade practices, assist in monopolization, or in any way violate federal, state, or applicable international trade regulations and antitrust laws. Any activities of the association or association-related actions of its officers, directors, staff members, invited speakers, or other contributors which violate these regulations and laws are detrimental to this industry and contrary to RIA policy.
Ooh, good job, Marcy.
Ooh. So, all righty. So you introduced everybody. So let's do a little bit of get into our segment one, revenue mix and the service breakdown, right? Some of the key things and data points that we've learned here is that 75% earn less than 30% of the revenue from commercial work. And on this slide, you see, it's the total annual gross revenue for the fiscal year. And you can go down and you can see some of those things. But also in this segment, we're going to look at residential is dominating. It's something that we all know that reconstruction and mitigation drive most of our revenue. And diversity shows that firms are more stable and steady profit margins when we diversify. So a couple of the questions we're going to shoot and answer on revenue mix and service breakdown. Phil, I'm going to go to you for this first question. Is what challenges do companies face when expanding into commercial markets?
Okay. So commercial is sort of the new flavor that people would like to go to. Like insurance companies are a little harder to work with these days. If you've noticed, the managed repair programs require a lot of additional administrative management. So there's a lot of things that are occurring in the industry. And so there's a lot of companies saying, hey, I want to be a commercial contractor. That's what I want to do. I want to go get work direct with property management companies. Maybe I do healthcare. So whatever it is we're looking at, commercial is that desired direction, and a lot of people in the industry want to go that direction. There's a couple of challenges, kind of, let's say initially when you look at that. The first one is competency. So it's kind of the same job, but it's not the same job. It requires everything at scale. Do I have the people, the resources, the time to really bring most of my staff, if I'm a small company, into play in a large job? And a lot of people don't have that diversification in their staff because they've got 5 other jobs they're working on at the same time. And so having to stop those to bring everybody over creates problems. So at scale, it's a lot easier because I've got more people, more resources, and I can take little bits from each part of these, run and maintain my existing jobs, and then go service this big, large construction job or a mitigation in a warehouse, something like that. And so first one, it's scale, and it's capital that allows us to fund and finance these jobs. So if I'm going to go put 20 people on a job and I may not get any sort of progress payment or down payment for, if I'm good, I got it in 3 days. And if I'm normal, it's going to take me 2 weeks to get anything coming my way or maybe longer. And so I need capital resources, I need cash, I need the ability to fund and finance the jobs. And so I think that part of it is our management team. Who's our project manager? Do they know how to understand the logistics of a large job? It's not just drying a building. It's drying a building while you've got people coming in and out. Maybe it's a retirement home, and I've got people that are trying to walk through the hallways with a walker. So whatever else. So I'm managing logistics while I'm doing a large job. And so the complexity of it are a little harder. It's my staff, it's my team, it's the quantity of people I have, it's the capital, and it's the equipment. Do I have large trucks to haul big amounts of material? Can I get 50 air movers and 20 dehumidifiers to a job site this afternoon? And do I have them sit in my warehouse? Do I have to rent them, lease them? So I think that the complexities of commercial, it's logistics, it's capital, and it's everything all at once for a company that maybe is used to dealing with 3 jobs in a week or 3 jobs in a day. So.
Yeah, I would definitely even say from guarantee side that that's spot on. You know, we definitely pull a lot of resources from other branches when that happens: scalability, logistics, capital. Katie, how does balancing mitigation, contents, and reconstruction affect financial stability?
So I was thinking through this one, and when I think about full service restoration companies, for me, this comes down to the value that you provide to the consumer, and being one solution for their problems kind of just helps you secure the job in the first place. Then you can add multiple divisions from just one customer. So that gives you a nice backlog. And that's more scalable than just specializing in maybe just mitigation only. We know that mitigation is so much more unpredictable as far as number of leads coming in the door. You can kind of count on, on average what you're going to get per week, per month. But knowing that those mitigation jobs are a shorter turnaround time and typically a faster payment timeline. So that's the cash flow and the lifeblood of your business right there. As long as you're documenting properly and invoicing quickly, and you have systems in place to make sure that you get paid quickly. With Recon, we know that we can plan that out. You can bring in partners to help you get that executed. It's consistent, it's predictable, it's reliable, but you typically have that longer payment timeline, and then mortgage endorsements on top of that. So again, systems and processes to get paid. You need to know how to get your mortgage endorsements in a timely manner. One of the benefits that I see if you're full service is having that ability to cross-train your teams, especially your technicians, and being able to have them a little bit more versatile in their skills and being able to have a little bit more option with who you can pull to go to a job that can give you a little bit higher revenue per employee rate, faster completion times. Again, when you can complete it faster, you get paid faster. But the balance here really comes from the GPs. Those higher GPs from the mitigation then contents really help you offset that repair GP, which is naturally going to be lower. If you look at the average GPs in this survey, you can see why you have to have a good mix if you want to get to around that 45% GP mark. You've got to take all three of these and do them exceptionally well. It is essential if you're going to be doing recon that you know how to do it profitably and you can protect that profitability. I think that starts with having the right people in the right seats in that project manager position. And then another thing here, I'm just going to say, I think you have to know what your specialty is, and you do that exceptionally well. You have to learn how to qualify your leads as they come in, rank them, decide if you're going to say yes, but also be comfortable with saying no and avoid that temptation to take on something that's not really in your service line just to get the revenue, because protecting profitability is the key to maintaining balance with your GP.
Couldn't agree more. Hey, can we go down a couple of slides? Because there's a slide that really breaks down. There we go. Jim, what do you have to say on balancing work and financial stability?
I think Katie was totally correct on a lot of her points, and particularly the way we look at it as historically being very reconstruction heavy. The more that we can diversify our emergency service channels is just a huge uplift to our profitability that's able to flow through. What I think is important about it too is that ultimately everything in your business is driven by getting jobs and opportunities in the door. If you're able to provide all services, as Katie mentioned, one, you can add a larger ticket for that single customer where you can now do multiple trades, but also you're going to get more opportunities because a lot of carriers and stakeholders in the industry are now looking for just one contractor that can handle the full job from start to finish. So that's how we look at it. And from a customer perspective, that just provides them with a much more seamless experience. And we have to ultimately keep them in mind as the true person that we're all working with here in this industry.
Yeah, thank you for that. Real quick, before we even move on to our next segment, if you all have any questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat or the Q&A, and we will leave some time after when we talk about these different segments to answer any questions you may have. And my apologies, I didn't say that earlier. So moving on to the next, yeah.
I wanted to add something quite substantial too, because it's relevant on the commercial losses. One of the things that we learned from the reporting here was the long delays in payments on some of these big jobs. It's not just the getting them started. And I wanted to mention that if you're going to jump into this world, you may be in a spot where you have $100,000 accounts receivable sitting out there for 2, 3, 4, 5 months at the end of the job. And so it's not just the getting started money that was important. And it was important that I mentioned that. It is having the foresight of saying, this could make my company, I can make a lot of money, or it could destroy my company because I'm going to work myself out of business really, really fast. And so that was a significant point on commercial that needed to be said. And I will sit back now and hand it over to you again.
I think it needed to be said, Phil. And when I think about just in our industry and options, training options that are available to us, so many of them are so heavy on sales and lead generation. And I don't necessarily think that getting the commercial leads is the biggest problem. I think it's making sure your whole company has systems and processes in place to document the job and get paid for the job. And like you said, having the technical expertise to actually execute it flawlessly.
Couldn't not agree with that statement anymore. All right, so we're going to move on to our segment 2 or any last little tidbits on revenue mix and service breakdown before we move? All right, awesome. So segment 2, we're going to be hitting on TPA work margins and profitability. 53% of companies that took the survey report 0 revenue from TPA. That's a huge percentage there. That's was surprising to me when I was reading that. Companies that do TPA work do report higher admin costs, and the profitability depends on efficiency and operational systems and not just really the TPA participation. So Jim, what are some things that restorers should take in consideration before taking on TPA work?
Yeah, so for us, we talk all the time about the process, and I think that's the key for being able to succeed on TPAs. And you have to be willing to invest in a system that's supportive of the workflows and the work streams that are required to keep everyone updated and in compliance. And then also have to invest in the training for your team to understand really what they're measuring at TPAs in terms of important metrics. And if you can execute on their game, right, or their play that they're asking you to run, it's almost a guaranteed driver of future demand. And I think that's a way to look at it, is that a lot of that money will be going towards a sales initiative, whether a marketing teammate or marketing through online sources. So we look at it as just lead generation, and it's completely variable costs, right, for you doing actually getting opportunities when you incur those fees. But you have to be able to execute, and you have to be able to respond quickly with really tight documentation and tight processes. But what's really impactful for us too is as you enter new markets, and if you do want to grow, it's a way to sustain your regular recurring inflow in terms of lead generation sources. And when you open a new market or add zip codes to your TPA profile, you're already able to use that reputation and scores that you've built as you enter new areas where an adjuster relationship or a commercial relationship may not be as sticky across different geographies.
Thank you. Phil, any considerations that you think that restorers should take before taking on the big TPA world?
Absolutely. It's a pretty sticky issue. And if it's a sometimes thing, so the first thing is that if you're going to do this, you have to realize that it's not about the work you do. It's about being able to support and communicate about the work you did, your written systems, your backup, your reporting ability. Doing good quality work is kind of table stakes. And so you have to start thinking it's not just about the work now, it's about the supporting and the documentation on the back end. And that's the hard part, because the insurance companies now took what was a cost to them, pushed it over to the contractors, made us pay for the privilege of doing their work for them on the reporting and the admin part of it. And we have to add that to our admin staff. So it's hard. That's why you have a bunch of companies saying, not for me. And if it's a sometimes thing, like I sometimes do TPA work, it gets really messy. Because let's just say, for example, I have a $50,000 job that's right next door to my office. And it's a maybe high profit, easy job. And I now have a program job, TPA job, that is 30 miles on the other side of town, but within my territory. I now, because of the agreements that I have with these companies, say I don't get to differentiate those. They're both equally important. I have to respond to them at the same time with the same fervor, and that's really hard. And so if I have a small team, trying to split those and wear those two hats at the same time is really, really complicated. And so I think that you have to give some thought to that. I getting on a TPA program and being a member of them is sometimes pretty easy. You sign up, you go through the process. But doing the work is a whole nother game. And so you can't treat these jobs very, very similar, like everything else you do. You have to treat them in a different manner. And so I know I talked to some people, it's in it. And it's when you try to now mix these jobs together that it gets really complicated. And I think that you need to become heavy on your systems. You need to become very dependent on the process that you follow and making sure that people know what their roles, responsibilities, and expectations within these are, not just being able to drive a job properly, but being able to photograph the right stuff and report the right numbers and metrics at the right time frame. That's extremely important. So I remember sitting with a really large client of mine, and our first initial reaction, we started talking strategy on this, was maybe we should just get rid of it. Maybe we should get rid of all our TPA work. And then we had our CFO, it wasn't this company, but we had our CFO come in and do the analysis and say, well, wait a minute. On average, we're making a really solid gross margin on these jobs because it's a blended margin. We get a mitigation job, we get equipment off the shelf. It keeps us busy and it leads to other work. So from a financial analysis, it seemed really silly to try to get rid of it. But what we did instead was separate departments in the company and say we have our people that don't do TPA work and our people that do TPA work. And we became really good at that. But it was hard because it's a lot of activity. When you have jobs all over a territory and the average job size is probably a third the size of your direct referrals, it's hard to manage those. So you have to become, this is where the know-how world becomes really, really important. It's having systems and process that help you seamlessly run through a job to maintain your margins, to serve the customer, and to meet the metrics on the other side of it. So if you've done all those things, you can now build something pretty solid. And that company that we work with, they now had really solid performers at each level of that, and people were much happier with their jobs. The stress kind of went away a little bit. But let's just say you're the average restorer in this report, you probably don't have those privileges of separating these out. So what you're gonna have to look at is, first of all, can you have some people that mostly do large losses and some people that mostly do them TPA work? And on the reconstruction, it's much harder than the mitigation. Because one of the things that happens with the mitigation process, if you start defining out your step by step on a program and you report all that, it makes you really good at what you do. And you can become, if you made that your standard of care for all of your clients, you can find that you can improve your business, improve your profitability, improve your customer service by defining that as your standard of care, but then identifying when you have to make exceptions because company A does something a little bit different than the company B. And so you need to now track and manage which one that was. And they, by the way, all require their own software program. And so you have to use their software program and know which one it was that's right. But the steps built into that help you be successful in those programs will help your company be more successful. But you have to have the discipline in that. You have to have the capacity, the training, and the resources to be successful in that within that. So that was a bit of a mouthful. But hopefully you got the flavor of the question there.
Well, I think it's a kind of a perfect segue to the slide that we're looking at, right? Of the breakdown of TPA usage based on revenue of companies. And Leighton, I'll ask you a question. What does this data tell you on the size of a company? What, who is focusing more on a TPA, who's not? And then also to that commercial side of it.
So for those that have the report, costofrestoration.com, you're on page 19. And keep in mind that this data is this is year end 2024. And so this is very insightful. And I mean, at the end of the day, what we're talking about are best practices, but certainly, these are conversations that the companies have to have internally to kind of, what is the best mix for not only our team, but our region, our operational rigor that we have internally. But I'll just call out two bars here. So if you look at that sub 1 million and that 5.1 to 10 million, I mean, that 5.1 to 10 million, 70% of our stores that ended their year in that revenue bracket last year did 70% of them said they do no TPA work. And so that's a pretty significant number, especially when you think that those are very growth oriented companies in general. And so companies that are very growth oriented and very interesting, a previous graph that you had, Marcy, showed the commercial mix. And just like a staircase, you see companies as they go and they grow up these higher and higher revenue brackets, you start to see commercial work begin to represent a larger and larger component of their revenue. And so I think fundamentally, as these companies begin to grow, I think that the administrative component and the speed. One of the things we may get at here in a later part of the discussion is really talking about time to payment and how time to payment is reflective of source of work. And so when you think about not only the time to payment, but the administrative burden, I think that you're seeing particularly a picture where I think some restorers, to Phil's point, are really wondering. They're asking, I think, some of those existential questions. My encouragement to everyone here is when you're in the report, each section, there's 3 sections. Each section closes with some conversational questions for your team. And today's discussion, I hope, will just be a primer for you to take your team through kind of a facilitated discussion of your own sometime before you wrap up the year. And I would just direct you to the questions at the close of each section. But that's what I would add, Mercy.
Yeah, I'm going to put something else on there too. The RIA produces a TPA scorecard every year. So if you're not doing any TPA work and this is something that you're thinking of doing, we offer a resource to all of our members. It's included in this report as well. An interesting thing, just some things that I want to tie together here. There are so many restorers out there saying that claim volume is down. Another thing that I see is every year when we do the TPA scorecard, not only do we see that not all TPAs are created equal, like some of them are better to work with than others, clearly. But there's more and more coming into the game, and they're competing against each other for claim assignments, which means that you are depending on them to handle your business development efforts. And we all know that sales management is not something that restorers love to do, but just remember, you're putting everything in their hands. And, I would want some transparency and accountability regarding their strategy to secure claims and assignments for you, because you are trusting them to bring revenue into the door. So with that, I would say, don't forget to invest in your own brand. You should always be marketing your company and not just depending on someone else to feed you there. So maybe also digging into the returns on this work as well, and making sure your reporting is really going into the weeds to help you identify maybe who you should partner with and maybe who you may not want to partner with in the future.
And Marcy, just to build on what Katie's saying, on page 19 of the report, there's a QR code that you can scan to access this TPA scorecard that the RA produces that Katie's referring to. And that's a quick, easy, free resource that's on page 19.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Leighton. One of the things, Phil, that we're talking about the difference between, TPA work and other work, and going back to the first segment of commercial work. And in this segment, we're talking about profitability. If you're not doing your TPA work well, right? Or if you're mixing that can affect what your profitability is if you have people that aren't used to doing both and intermingling. I love that idea of separating, if you can, the people that are performing your TPA work versus anything else. All right, so moving right along into our segment 3, we're going to talk about key metrics and financial health. So some of the key data points that if we're looking at here, on that, is 41.2% of revenue is equal to our median total assets. I think that may be on a couple of slides down. Third slide. And another key point on these slides that we're talking about is our average collection time is 60 days. So in talking about key metrics and financial health, Jim, I'm going to go to you, is what metrics should companies, owners be tracking to mirror high performers here?
So for us, everybody in the organization is a collector, and you hear that the first day you start in the session with me and our CEO, Andy, and then you hear it pretty much every day the rest of the time here. And we have a full-time collections team, and I think that's something that has been a competitive advantage for us. And when I talk to some other smaller organizations, something that I think results in them struggling. But by having somebody who's dedicated in an office at a computer, effectively being the quarterback of all of their jobs within their portfolio, they have the final say. They have the authority to stop jobs when things don't smell right. I think just putting a level of focus on it and being very clear with your organization that we need to get the money in the bank for this all to continue to work and for the growth to be to come to fruition, because cash is really the engine that drives everything there. And the way that we do that across the organization, and we do it really for everybody in the company, has some type of metric that's very visible, but we report on everything weekly throughout the week, how our progress is doing, and then how we're tracking towards quarterly, annual, and larger goals as a team. But I think just putting numbers out there for everybody to understand and see, so that your team, who's actually the ones effectively driving all of these benchmarks, can see how they're doing, starts to put that urgency in their mind, and they can understand really where they need to be. And all of a sudden it takes a life of its own where now our collections team drives it, and they know much more closely how they're doing and where they stack up than me or any of the other leadership team does, which wasn't easy to get there. But once you kind of build that culture, a lot of that can take care of itself.
Katie, as an owner, what do you feel is the metrics that other owners should put in place?
Yeah, just talking about KPIs for the company, Jim made some pretty good points. We do things a little differently. Our AR number is about 20 days lower than average in the report, so you got to find what works best for you. But when I talk about just our company in general and then the metrics that I'm looking at, the first thing that I think is the most important is that your company needs a strategic plan. And you can't have a strategic plan without SMART goals, with that M in SMART standing for measurable. So you need to measure how well you're executing your strategy. So your KPIs may be a little different than mine, and that's going to be okay as long as you're getting results, because what gets measured is going to get done. So the obvious choices here for owners of what they're looking at, know the number of leads. You need to know how many leads you need to get every month to reach the goal, or every week, your projection, your backlog, gross profit, not just for the company, but for each division. And then by each PM, that's a really big one there, because it can take one PM who's not performing well to wreck the GP for the whole company. Knowing your AR numbers, how many days is it taking you to get paid? How much of your AR is over 90 days? That's a big metric there. I look at my financial discipline KPIs. I want to look at my current ratio. I want to look at our assets, our liabilities. Days liquidity is a really big one for me personally to track. I want to make sure I'm not running a lifestyle business. I want to be prepared for the unexpected, or just prepared to reinvest and grow the business. So for me, I'm looking at that. But around this time of year, when people are doing annual planning, one thing I'm kind of diving into in detail is knowing more about the ideal referral source or the carriers that we work with. So I want to look at some detailed carrier reports. And for us, we're putting self-pay in as a carrier as well, so that we can see self-pay versus carriers. I want to see the percent of all revenue so that we can ensure we're diversified. When I'm looking at those carriers, I want to look at the average GP, average days to get paid, and then average approval times, because some carriers are just more difficult to work with than others, even adjusters. Some adjusters only call you when they have a problem, right? And then that customer is going to be a problem, and getting paid is going to be a problem with them. So then I want to let my numbers drive the company's business development efforts, which should move the needle in all areas of the business. So I just think that you have to have a strategy built around measuring performance and knowing where you want to go and setting goals to get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I comment on that? I want to comment on that.
Absolutely, Phil. Go ahead.
So first of all, well done, Katie. And as I'm sitting and thinking about the average restorer, they may look, you just listed off 20 things you're measuring in your company, and that's a lot. But guess what? We're business owners. It's important to have the data, to have good numbers, so we have a feeling. You don't go to a doctor and they just tell you, yeah, you don't look good. They come in and they do statistics on you. They check your blood pressure, they check your pulse, they check your blood, whatever it is. In your business, you need to do the same thing. And if all the stuff that Katie just talked about seems overwhelming to you, I suggest you go take that retreat that Katie just talked about and say, how do we get better information so we can manage our business, so we can be in control instead of somebody else being in control of us. We're now in control. We're aware of what's happening. It's going to keep us from getting into trouble, into problem areas in our business. And so having that data, that's the first step in improving the data. So once you have it, you have a target, my benchmark number, you can start comparing it to what we just saw in this report here and say, how do we get it better? I'm just going to go out and say, if you're at 60 days on your accounts receivable, you have problems, unless it's big commercial stuff driving those numbers. If you're an everyday contractor and you're sitting at 60 days, my goodness, you now have a year's worth of profit sitting in accounts receivable. That's a tough business to manage. You want to make it better? Measure it, set a target, improve on it. Collect from a position of strength, shutting a job down if you had to. Don't collect from a position of weakness. When I'm done, I'm not going to sit and now I've finished my job. I have nothing to leverage here. And now I'm going to go ask for my money and I'm going to hope that I get 100% of it. That's going to be a problem. So Katie, good job on all of those reports. And that is something that every company who's listening, you should, at a minimum, find 10 things in your company to measure. And so there was a book that was written, it's about time, it was called. And in this, they make the obvious statement of, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So that was good, obviously. The second thing that I thought was really relevant is if you choose to measure it, you should choose to manage it. So there's 500 things we can measure, but we can't manage 500 things. So what is the reasonable amount of things in our company that we can control that are important to us, that are lifeblood issues, our pulse and our heartbeat and our key numbers that are going to make you successful? And if you want to know what those numbers are, look at this report. They're here. These are the things that are measured in the report. And here's what the best performers do. And you can look at it, model it based on your size of company. I'm 1 million, or I'm 5 million, or 15 or 50 million. Or if I want to be 50, how do I scale it out and measure it and create it before I get there and have good data? So good job. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wrote the note down when Katie was talking. As a lot of those smaller companies, you're in the day to day, and sometimes you overlook those measurables and those metrics that you need to. So it's really good advice from both of y'all. And looking at this slide that we have up here, just the average gross profit margins by work type of contents is at 52 on average, mitigations 57 on average, and reconstructions at 34%. So question for, I'll give this to Phil. What's working and strengthening cash flow or collections? I mean, you hinted at some of that just then, but what are some other things?
So job mix. So if I'm going to do big reconstruction projects, it's going to take me much longer to have this. The cycle time is just longer, and so the job's going to be longer. There's going to be delays in payments. If I've got a mitigation job and it's a 5-day job in and out, and I get my bill out the door and I can do that quickly, I can collect it quickly and start churning cash in my business. And one of the things I don't think it comes up in the report here, but it would be an important thing to understand is I'm blown away at how many restoration companies take weeks to get a bill out the door.
Mm-hmm.
If you finish a job, think about an adjuster. An adjuster's life is similar to ours. They've got way too much to do in too little time. So they got a stack of 30, 40, 70 files sitting beside their desk. And I'm going to go send them a bill 3 weeks after a job is done. Guess where that bill goes? At the bottom of that stack. If I finished a job yesterday and I sent them a bill today, guess what? Maybe it improves my chance of that adjuster saying, wow, okay, this job is fresh in mind. I can write a check. I can close the file. I'm going to do that. So if I'm trying to be of service to my clients and I look at speed, I look at cycle time, and I look at my ability to kind of track and push these numbers. So the type of job that I do, the speed at which I send an invoice out, the effective margin on that type of work. And we just saw what the numbers should be. There's a whole bunch of suppositions on those margins that we saw, but they're reflective of what it's going to be. We know that if we do more mitigation, we get better margins. If we do more construction, we have lower margins. So if we're looking at speeding cash flow, making our company more healthy, then look at modeling and matching our overhead to our profitability and build profit first, but then also understand there's a lag in cash. So my profits may say one thing, but my cash is going to say something else. Make sure you understand the relationship between profits and cash, and don't spend your profits, spend your cash.
Yeah. Thank
A
you, Phil.
couple
Yep.
things that I see here, Marcy. I think a lot of times there's poor estimating and poor documentation that causes a lot of issues with getting paid. Most of the time, we are the root of our own getting paid issues. I think you got to have the right people driving collections. And Jim, I love how you shared what works for you with us. Our project coordinators drive collections. They are the ones that are doing the customer onboarding from day one. They support them and hold their hand from the first day to the last day. They're getting mentioned in 5-star reviews nonstop. For me, I think for our customers, I think it creates a great experience for them because they've got someone there supporting them the whole way. You're turning them into a raving fan, and they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure they get that money to you quickly. But some other things that I see in a lot of companies, we don't make it easy for someone to pay us. And so I think when you think about your own consumer behavior, when a bill comes into your house that you can't quickly pay online, many times it'll get stuck somewhere in your kitchen and you'll forget to pay it. And somebody's like, it just doesn't, it's not a priority for you, right? And so, what are you doing to make it easier for a customer to send you money? And if you're sending them a paper invoice and waiting for them to write you a check and get an envelope and a stamp, good luck with that. That's going to take you 60 plus days to get paid. So I just think also that customer onboarding process, day one, tell them what to expect. FAQs, making sure you make it very clear for them. This is how this is going to work. Here's what you can expect. And here's what you can expect if we don't get paid in a timely manner. And that way you've got a lean process in place. You don't like mess around with them, 60, 90 days. Oh, here's what we're going to do. Day one on the job, they know how collections work for the company. So the more you can communicate that on the front end, the more they know exactly what to expect at every step of the way.
Yeah, love it. Jim, you have any?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And kind of the way that we operate our collections team is to be a liaison early on. So as soon as that job goes into production, they're reaching out and really kind of building credibility as the financial advocate for them to help them get through the process. And frame it up like that, it doesn't feel like a collections agency coming on way at the end of the job. And Katie was talking about strategic planning for the business. I think within each individual job, like we almost have our collectors do a strategic planning for that job, because you should be able to identify based on the carrier, customer, and source of the job where the cash will be coming from at the end of the day. And then you can pivot and build your processes around the fastest ways to get that documentation or invoice over to the source of the cash, where it's ultimately coming from. But absolutely agree with that. You got to frame it up so that the customer feels like it's almost a service that comes with it. And then all of a sudden the payment aspect kind of psychologically flipped.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add a nugget here too, because I just spoke to the head of one of the TPA programs, and it's just really easy, simple. There's 1,000 objections to this, but he said, you know what the reasons why we don't get money out as quick as we have designed? He said people don't ask. They don't ask.
That's right.
So here's a TPA that pays a bill within 48 hours of verification, seeing it, and automatically moves money to you. And he said people don't ask for it. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we're getting to the last couple of minutes. So some practical applications that you all can do with your teams within your company. And Leighton hit it, and I believe we put it into the chat, is to look at that TPA scorecard when you're looking at, hey, do I want to get into the TPA game? Look at it, see what works best for your company. And also on page 34 of the survey, there is discussion questions. Have those conversations with your teams and talk about it. And so, some strategic things, some tips of having strategic meetings with your teams here that's been given to you. And I think that is an absolute key. I guarantee we did our business planning just 2 weeks ago. So it's something that you want to always continue to talk about. One last question before we turn it over to Q&A panel, and I'll leave this open to you all. What internal meeting rhythms have helped you turn financial data into strategy?
I'll go ahead with that one first. So the two things that we look at and report on every single week are job inflow or opportunities that are coming in the door. And then we measure really our conversion of turning those into production and average job size, and then share that with the team and track that against what we had set up in our strategic planning process the year before. So that way we can all know how we're trending against what our expectations were. And then one thing over the last 2 years that we've started to do that's been very impactful for our department leaders is to have a P&L meeting where we review their monthly results of their division all the way down to the bottom line or the contribution margin for their business. And it just really adds a level of ownership where that department head now truly feels like they're owning a business and running a business rather than just doing some part to produce jobs. They got to protect profitability all the way down. And then that provides empowerment for them to have some skin in the game and start to have strategic discussions around how to allocate resources and funds. And I think that combination of just weekly updates on the leading edge and then taking a step back to look at how that all shook out through the bottom line, and even tying in cash flow as well, has been very impactful and just elevates everybody's understanding of what their key drivers of success and profitability are within the full business.
Phil, Katie, any
I'll take this one.
meeting rhythm suggestions?
We run on EOS. I love the system for our business. It's been a game changer for us, and that puts us in an annual, then a quarterly planning rhythm. So we're resetting the company every 90 days. We've got our measurables for each 90-day period that are tied to those annual goals as well. But then we have an all-company meeting once a month. We give us time to get the month end finalized, but it's a standing meeting once a month. During that time, we share the financial performance, the KPIs. We're going to celebrate what's going well. And if something's not meeting the goal, we're going to talk about what we're doing to improve it. We don't shy away from it. But from there, every team member participates in a level 10 meeting, and everyone in the company has a measurable. So sometimes you're in a monthly meeting, a biweekly, or a weekly meeting, but each meeting has a scorecard. So you know exactly how your performance is going. And when we're not meeting the goal, we drop that number down to the issues list, and then we're going to come up with a plan to remove any obstacles that keep us from reaching that goal. But when your numbers are timely and accurate and in front of you, that gives you the data that you need to be able to make decisions. So for us, we schedule all company meetings around when the numbers are ready to be able to give everybody an idea of how they're performing.
I like that. I like that. Phil?
I'm just one thing, so that was pretty comprehensive, and I agree with all what was said. The only thing to add to that is I've worked with some larger companies, and one of the things they found as a helpful tool is they had strategic leadership meetings and they had operational leadership meetings, and they changed the rhythm of those, and so it was like every other week. And so the strategic is creating these big plans, but somebody's got to do them. Got to get them done. And so that's where the operational comes in. And if you had 10 people in your strategic or 15 people in your strategic meetings, it's really hard. And so you can push those and separate them out. And that was when we kind of uncovered that, it just created a different level of effectiveness at the larger scale of these companies.
Yeah. Well, we are at our time. I believe the questions that were asked were answered into the Q&A session, but I do want to, two things. Christy put into the chat, you can now pre-register for the 2026 cost of doing business survey. Remember, this survey is dependent on your input, and so we really value and would appreciate any time, your time that you can to complete the survey, because it's always just going to help the industry grow and to be better. And as you see, we have a future webinar up there. December 11th, it's going to dig a little deeper on profitability drivers, leadership, and workforce insights. The focus is on sections 2 and 3. So thank you all for joining. Panelists, it's been fantastic. Appreciate it.
Thanks, you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.